Hello, everyone. Welcome to the lightning talk. So we'll get started in just a moment as everyone settles in, but thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you're located. We're really excited to have you here today. So depending what platform you're joining from, you will be able to add comments in the comment section of the respective panel. So you can drop us a message, let us know where you're joining from today. We would love to see where folks are tuning in from. And again, we'll get started in just a moment as folks start to tune in. Hi from Ottawa, from New York City. So exciting. We had over 200 people sign up for the event, which is incredible. Oh my goodness, we have Australia. This is pretty cool. For me personally, this is one of the largest virtual events that I've been a part of. So it's really exciting to see everyone tuning in. And if you, whatever platform you're joining from, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, if you are logged in to that platform from your personal account, then you are here. You've made it to the right place. If you're signed into that account, then you are able to participate in the chat from that platform. We have lots of folks from Calgary, from Orlando, Florida, Edmonton. Amazing. Okay, so we're at 1 after the hour, so I think we will get started. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in celebrating International Women's Day and in the extended International Women's Week. So we have speakers joining us from across Turtle Island, or present-day North America, including the Treaty 13 lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, as well as the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, which is present-day Toronto, the people of Treaty 7 region, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nation, which is present-day Calgary, as well as the unceded lands of the Algonquin peoples of the Anishinaabe Nation, which is present-day Ottawa, and people joining from many other places as well. So we encourage you to identify and learn about the land on which you reside. And as a starting point, you can use the digital tool native-land.ca to learn about the lands on which you reside. But learning must also be followed by action. And so in alignment with our theme today of breaking the bias in STEM, we encourage you to advocate for and promote your Indigenous colleagues, speak up and dismantle discriminatory behavior and policies rooted in colonialism, and support organizations that are providing STEM education to Indigenous youth, including IndigiSTEAM, the Actua in STEM program, the Alnueg Education Center, and ACES, the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, all of which I will provide links for in the chat later in the conversation. So let's get started with today's event. So hello again, my name is Jasmine Shaw, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's event, Lightbulb Moments, Women in STEM Overcoming Personal and Systemic Biases. This is a lightning talk style event, which means you have the incredible opportunity of learning from not one, not three, but 8 powerful women in STEM for approximately 5 minutes each. So in alignment with the 2022 International Women's Day theme, Break the Bias, each speaker will be sharing a personal story about a bias that she has faced or a bias that she has held and how she overcame that bias, as well as a key takeaway for you to bring with you back to your career. So throughout the presentation, you may submit questions in the comments section of whichever platform you are viewing from, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. Now, when you are sharing questions, in order to help us facilitate the Q&A at the end, please type question in front of your question, and that will make it a lot easier for us on our end. And we will do our best to address all the questions during the 15-minute Q&A period at the end, but you're also encouraged to share other comments and reflections and thoughts throughout the talk. So without further ado, let's kick off today's lightning talk with Kylie Woods.
Thank you, Jasmine. Sorry, I needed a minute while I'm on the tech support here. Hi, everyone. It is so nice to see you today. As Jasmine mentioned, I'm Kylie Woods, founder and executive director of Chic Geek, a nonprofit committed to building gender diversity in technology. We design programs like career pathing to support mid-career women in tech because the research shows that this segment is the most likely to leave tech companies and tech careers altogether. Reducing attrition by just 1/4 would add 220,000 women in science, engineering, and technology back into the workforce. And that's an impact I want to be a part of. I started SheetGeek at 22 years old. It went from idea to reality in the span of 3 months. By our second year, we were running 57 events a year. That's more than one every week. And by our 5th year, we had almost 50 volunteers running all of our operations, donating thousands of hours. And SheetGeek since then has run hundreds of events and built a community of women over 10,000 strong. I've been recognized as a top 40 under 40 by Avenue Magazine, profiled as one of Beta Kit's Need to Know Women in Tech, and I've been hand-selected to represent a Canadian voice for women in STEM by the US Embassy. And I share these accomplishments with you, not to brag, but to set the stage and remind you that journeys always look polished and powerful from the outside. But I have struggled with my own bias in ways that have held me back, causing me to question and doubt myself. And that's the real story today. There have been times in my 10-year journey with SheetGeek where I've been the youngest, most inexperienced person on the team. And with that comes a lot of insecurity. And I often looked outward as to what a leader was supposed to be. I read a lot of books, listened to a lot of podcasts, and watched a lot of people. The definition of leadership that I came out with was that leaders are strong. They show no weakness, and they shepherd their teams in the direction that they decide. Leaders tell. Early in my career, I took a leadership aptitude test based on the DISC assessment. It stands for Dominance, Influence, Steadiness, and Conscientiousness. It's a fairly well-known personality and aptitude assessment. When I got my results back, I was sitting in a room of other leaders. I was like one of the youngest and the only person of color. And I was looking at these charts and it hit me like a punch in the stomach. I scored really low on the leadership assessment. And I almost started crying because my first reaction was, I don't belong here. I don't deserve to be the executive director of SheetGeek. I don't know what I'm doing in this leadership development course. Obviously, I shouldn't be here. And that was a really hard pill to swallow when I was already feeling insecure about how I was showing up as a leader. But when I dug into it, my leadership aptitude was low because my perceptions of leadership were completely different than my authentic ways of being. I had a bias that leaders are people who tell, who have all the answers and never show weakness. And this misconception kept me in a place of never feeling good enough because I couldn't fit that mold. I am naturally a question asker, a facilitator. I'm a listener with big feelings, and I need the space to share that at work too. In my journey to define what it meant to be a leader, I did a lot of discovery, but I didn't pause to evaluate and question, why were those things? Why does a leader show no weakness? Why has it always been done that way? Should I continue to do that? Is there a different way to lead? These pausing questions are hard to ask because they slow us down, but they are critical in helping us recognize the patterns and structures that we live in that perpetuate bias. My story is about individual bias, but there is also strong societal biases that hold women back too. But breaking institutional bias and rebuilding the systems is a daunting task. And it's easy to say, that's not my problem, or there's no bias. But there is power in each and every one of us to recognize bias, pick it up, look at it, inspect it, and question it. Bias thrives in places where we're too afraid to look closely and question. because it knows that when we do, we'll start to see the cracks. I am breaking the bias by confronting my own individual ones. And I will use this as practice to flex that critical muscle so I can start confronting systemic ones. My ask of you today is to reflect about the one thing you know about leadership. Maybe it's that leaders tell or leaders show no weakness, but put that statement out there and then pick it up, inspect it, question it, and decide for yourself what it means to be a leader. I hope you'll bravely join me in the journey to learn from our individual biases and use that as a superpower to start changing the systemic ones. Thank you. Next up, I'd like to bring back Jasmine Shaw on stage. Jasmine has a tireless energy to support women in STEM and is a community activator wherever she goes. She is the reason we are all gathered here today. Welcome, Jasmine.
Thank you so much, Kylie, and thank you for sharing your story. And can I just say that line, that bias thrives in places where we are afraid to look close and listen? Wow, that was so powerful. So thank you again, Kylie, and hello again, everyone. I am Jasmine Shaw. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a professional engineer, an entrepreneur, and a change maker. So I currently work as a technical program manager here in the software world, and as Kylie mentioned, I'm a very passionate champion for women in STEM. But my story for today's lightning talk is going to take us back a few years, in fact, nearly 10 years ago, when I started my very first year of engineering at Carleton University here in Ottawa. So, for those who haven't experienced engineering undergraduate firsthand, I'll try to paint a picture for you. So, it's a very intense experience, not only because of the intensity of the studies and the rigor of the academia, but from a cultural perspective. So, the engineering culture and student experience is one that's very unique and quite like nothing I've ever experienced before. So, the moment that I stepped onto campus for engineering Frosh Week, from that moment on, you are welcomed by purple people. So people who are literally, whose bodies are dyed head to toe in purple dye, wearing hard hats, chanting engineering songs. And it's quite overwhelming and quite powerful and easy to get swept up in. And I became enamored by the engineering student life and the culture because it was so different from anything that I had ever personally experienced before. And in fact, I found something quite reassuring about the fact that everyone else was kind of quirky and awkward, just like me. But unfortunately, at the time, there were more sinister elements at play to the engineering student culture. So at this time, a decade ago, the engineering profession and student culture was very self righteous, and engineering was seen as the ultimate profession or program of study. And there was this slogan that I remember seeing all over campus on stickers, on patches, on people's notebooks. It was ERTW, or Engineers Rule the World. And at the time, I didn't think much of it. But really, that goes to show the mindset that engineering students had about engineering relative to other professions. And we made snide comments and remarks about artsies or folks who were studying the social sciences and humanities and doubted their contributions to a world that was becoming ever dependent on technology. And during my first year of university, I so strongly believed in this notion that engineering was better than other disciplines that I got into a rather heated Facebook fight with other students about this very topic. And my main argument was that engineering was more practical than the social sciences. And this is embarrassing for me to regale because, of course, looking back, this is a pretty embarrassing story to share that I got into a Facebook fight about this. So it was not a good look on my part. So although in subsequent years I didn't get into any more Facebook fights, thankfully, I still held on quite strongly to this holier than thou belief about engineering. And it wasn't until I graduated and started working as an engineer that I realized that engineering companies and programs are comprised of so many people who are not engineers and that they're integral to the success of these projects. So I worked with project managers, subcontract managers, configuration management experts, technical documentation experts, safety specialists, marketing specialists, communications folks, a whole slew of people who were not engineers. And this was really an earth shattering realization for me at the time as a young junior engineer because my world was just so limited before. But the more I worked on cross-functional projects and initiatives, the more that these beliefs that I had held on to started to fade and disappear into the background because I started to see the direct value that diverse professionals and perspectives contributed to the projects that I was working on. And I'm really grateful to have worked at companies and on projects where success truly relies on diverse skills and perspectives. And overcoming my bias about folks who are not engineers has enabled me to not only show up as a better teammate and colleague, but it's taught me a pretty valuable life lesson that people's worth is not based on their degree or their title or their role, but the quality of their ideas and solutions that they bring to the table. And I think that rings true for just about anything, not engineering. So that's the story of my personal bias that I held and how I overcame it. And now I'll pass it on to Lennis to share her story about overcoming bias.
Wow. Thank you, Kylie. Thank you, Jasmine. This is incredible. I'm so happy to be here. As a quick introduction, my name is Lennis. I'm originally from Venezuela and actually graduated in the US with a master's in chemical engineering. I worked in the industry for about 16 years until I decided to take a leap of faith and actually work now as a wellness engineer. So yes, it's a made up title, but the reason why I do this is because I am passionate about teaching women in STEM how to let go of all the stress and chaos, learn the tools for burnout prevention so you ladies and gentlemen can truly create that impact, fulfillment, and joy that you deserve and feel that you have achieved enough at the end of each day. Now, I want to take you back into the late 90s. Growing up in Venezuela, I was a senior in high school, and one of the professors asked the class to share what we wanted to do after we graduated high school. What career path did we choose? When it came to my turn, I said, I'm going to study chemical engineering. The boys in the room started laughing, one of them saying, yes, girls that are not attractive go for engineering. And then at the same time, I had a different perspective because my female cousins were going to engineering school. And when I mentioned that I wanted to do chemical engineering, my dad did his research and found out that many of the managers and leaders at the biggest oil company in the country were actually female. So he came to me one day and said, okay, I think engineering is a good career path for you. If you work for a big company, you'll have job security and you will be okay in the future. So now here comes two more biases added to my list, that girls that go for engineering are not very good looking, and that if I work for a big company, I will have job security. So I started my studies in engineering, and then I ended up moving to the US. My life was turned upside down. Not only was I going through the culture shock of not knowing the language and moving into New York City right at the beginning of winter, something that in Venezuela we don't truly experience, but I started to adjust. So my brother came with us. We moved as a family. My dad was working for the UN. My brother was doing a master's in engineering because he's also a fellow engineer, and my mom took a sabbatical. As I was navigating this new culture, I really made the effort to learn English as quickly as possible and continue my engineering study. What I found is that as soon as I walk into the rooms, the fellow classmates were starting to make comments about the way that I dress. For some reason, this was something that they felt that they needed to tell me. So that was a little shocking, but at the beginning, I didn't pay too much attention. I was really focused on studying. Then these comments continue, and I started to try to fit in, to minimize myself, to pick clothes that were more aligned or closer to what my classmates were wearing. And this continued from my actual professional experience, people just making comments about the way I was dressed, whether positive or negative. It was just something that kept coming up. As I kept getting those experiences, I started to really become an expert at what Brene Brown calls armors. I was putting armors on top just to try to fit in. because through all these experiences, I was also getting the microaggressions and comments from managers. You smile too much, or you're way too optimistic. This is not appreciated. Things that continue to dim my light, and I continue to put on armors until I had to say, hello, depression, hello, anxiety, and hello to my therapist. I couldn't figure out what was going on and what was wrong with me. But at this point, I needed to learn how to shed those armors, how to let go of trying to meet everyone's expectations on the outside. And I had to ask myself this question that I want to invite you to ask yourself. Who are you without your titles, without the career path that you've chosen? Who are you without your labels? It's a hard question to answer. And then I want you to dig even deeper and ask yourself, can I find joy with myself if I remove those labels, if I take away my titles? And I hope that with these questions, you start to realize that you have a uniqueness. That is just you. Nobody else can be exactly like you. So my message today is for you to embrace who you are, to shine your light, to create the boxes where you and only you will fit in, because you have unique gifts. And those gifts are meant to be shared with everybody else. And when you are able to let go of those armors and be fully authentic, you allow us to create deep connections with you. The same way that just by showing up authentically, I'm allowing you to create connection with me, to find a role model, and also become the role model you want to see. If you don't see anybody out there doing what you want to do, go for it. Find the courage. Do it. It is so worth it. So, to close this, I want you to think about it. Are you ready to let go of trying to meet all the outside expectations and tune into that really wise inner voice that lives within you? I can promise you it's scary, but it is so, so worth it. So thank you so much for listening to us today. And I am excited to introduce Sana as our next speaker for this event.
Wow, thank you so much, Lenise. Definitely be yourself and don't be influenced by others is definitely something I've learned from this great talk today. I appreciate it. Just to introduce myself super quickly, I'm Sana Bouchaban, a licensed professional engineer working in the federal government. I work as an environmental policy and planning manager, and over the years, I've been involved with many engineering organizations aiming to, follow my passion, making a difference, and promoting diversity and inclusion. And my talk today is, I'm going to make it as quick as possible because I know we have a couple minutes to really share everything we want to share today. I'll go back in history a bit. When I was in high school, I thought I was really good at sciences and maths, and I decided that I really want to do engineering. But people were like, what? Engineering? Isn't that a male-dominated field? Isn't it for men? Well, pick something more feminine, more middle ground. So I'm like, okay, biomedical engineering, right? Because biomedical is feminine. So it kind of makes it a little more feminine. First day of my class, majority of the people in my class were men. Looking at my class, I can count the women in my hand on one hand, and I can literally tell you that 80% of those women were biomedical engineers. Surprise, surprise, right? Because it's more feminine, or chemical engineers. Fast forward, after graduating, I started working at several different companies. And one of those companies, I was one of the very few girls on the floor. Team of 16 people, 2 women, and I was one of the women, and I was the most junior one. And the other one, she was a senior architect, and she's been there for decades. My boss, I used to have a boss that used to make me sit next to him and keep an eye on me in case I was on the phone, because, girls don't work and they're always on the phone. And he would never judge anyone else who would be on the phone from my male colleagues, because most likely if they were on the phone, it would be insurance calls, or it would be a doctor's office calling,
or the school calling. I used to even be so afraid to pick up my parents' or my brother's phone calls so I don't even get in trouble. He would even count my washroom breaks and confront me about them. Let that sink in. So when I do my work, I knew I was good at what I was doing. He used to ask my male colleagues all times, can you check her work for me before I dealt with a client or before I presented something to a client? And that didn't happen just for the first couple months. It happened for years working in that place. So after working there for that long, I started questioning my abilities. My manager at that time made me feel maybe it's true. Maybe I was never good enough. Maybe simply because men are better, they're more technical than women in workplaces, or they're better at the technical work or somewhat. During my time there, and I had many one-on-ones with this manager, and one time I told him, I'd really like to pursue a career in management. And he laughed and said, maybe consider working on your technical side first, which told me, A, I'm not good at being an engineer, and B, I won't ever be a manager. I'll let that go. Fast forward, bonus time. I always got half of the bonus that my colleagues got, which made me doubt my abilities. So maybe I kept thinking to myself, maybe I guess it's true. Men maybe are better with the technical work, right? Maybe better with leading teams and organizations. Women can't lead a team with a high male dominated workplaces, right? So I worked in male-dominated engineering workplaces, which really affected my confidence in performing my work due to the idea of men are better at technical work and leading teams, which was all in my head. Society has implemented this idea in my head, which caused a strong bias towards the way I've behaved. Instead of focusing on the right competencies that will help me become a great leader and manager one day, I kept thinking that can never happen because, well, no one will ever take me seriously simply because I'm a woman. But I kept wondering, how can I ever lead a team full of men and have them trust me as a leader if that's what society is implying? How can I reach my goal in becoming a leader in an organization one day? Fast forward again, left that company, joined another company with fear. My manager at that company realized that I maybe feel that I am a little traumatized, and I've went through a lot at the other company, and I tried to prove that I am capable of doing things by working those extra hours, right? And he helped me focus on my strengths and mentored me instead of demolishing my abilities like the other manager did. Fast forward again, I joined the federal government and I met with several different men and women, executives from different departments. And I've met a lot of women who've succeeded in their fields and were examples of great leaders. I had many men and women in the federal government mentor me, and I learned a lot from them. I focus on what I believe in, which is myself. And yes, I am capable. I worked hard, and I am a manager at CBSA, leading one of the most important initiatives, climate change and sustainable development strategies, and leading an amazing team because I believed in myself, not in the bias I have faced in the past. So what was my secret to the journey? Is I became the leader I wish I had. I had the courage to make change happen by inspiring, by mentoring, by listening to others, and by being authentic and vulnerable. I took ownership of my own development and spoke up when something was wrong. I took ownership of everything from A to Z. My goal was to be an example for others and to walk the talk. I focus on the key competencies and what makes a leader successful and not on the gender. I focus on building trust within a system, with a team, within an organization. The takeaways is don't be intimidated by being the only woman. Be human, be authentic, and have humanity. Be true to yourself and reach your audience. Make sure you're strong, you're confident, and in the value that you bring to the table. Know who you are and believe in yourself. The real people that will contribute to your career already know who you are. And I just want to leave you with this. People never forget the way that they made you feel, right? People never will forget how, for instance, if you were to encounter a situation, you'll never forget how you felt at that point. So be careful how you treat others, because I know for sure I will never forget how I felt years ago when it all started with me. That concludes my talk for today. Thank you so much. And happy International Women, I'd like to call it Women Week. And on to the next speaker. I'd like to introduce Rapali. And you're up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sana. And what a phenomenal lineup that we've had. I've had so much pleasure just listening to the stories. I kind of forgot I was supposed to speak. Um, a quick introduction of myself. My name is Dr. Rapalu Chaudhary. I am a molecular and cellular biologist by training. I am currently a senior scientist at a Alara Life Sciences company, but also am the founder and CEO of a small nonprofit organization called Lotus STEM. So for my story, I actually relate a lot to what Sana and Lennis were talking about, the microaggressions that you feel in the workplace. My postdoctoral fellowship, which is an aspect that you take on after you finish your PhD, well, I did I did a lot of research to get to that point, and I underwent a lot of microaggressions. I was told by my supervisor as well as my colleagues that I was not good at what I thought I was doing. They didn't believe in my research and they felt that they needed someone else to redo the research that I had done. It really broke me. I was left feeling like I did not belong. My goals and aspirations were to go into academia and become a professor with my own lab and be able to mentor students in the research that they would do, while also teaching and exploring the world and the curiosity that I have about science. But having your colleagues and your supervisor tell you over and over again that other people need to double check your work, or they didn't have the confidence that you were able to think on your own and they needed someone else to brought in to actually plan your experiments. It's a hard pill to swallow. And so after 3 years of enduring that, I made the very difficult decision to leave research and to leave academia. So almost after 12 years of having done research in different universities, in different fields with different model organisms, I was now at a crossroads where I didn't know what comes next. And I was heartbroken. I was walking away from something that I truly loved. I was walking away from a big part of my identity. Lennis talked about, who are you if it weren't for your titles? Who are you if we removed what you do away? Who are you as an individual? And I was left asking those questions of myself. I didn't recognize who I was as a person. I didn't know if I could consider myself as a woman in STEM anymore. I had no idea if research would ever be part of my life again. So in that moment of heartbreak and lots of tears, I realized that I cannot be alone. There must be more people out there who have had similar experiences. And I was looking for a support system. I was looking for a network. And for that, I actually had to sit down and think about what do I do next? How do I find this network? How do I find this support system? And in that moment, I realized, why don't I make one? I should just try. If I'm looking for something specific, or I'm looking for people who have gone through similar situations, I should create a platform that people can come and share their stories. And so I started the nonprofit Lotus STEM. And through the first few years of it, first couple of years, many people around me continued to call me brave and successful. But I sat there and compared myself to those who were in research, who were continuing on in a field that I loved. And I couldn't help but feel stagnant and felt like I was not growing as an individual. And I had to refocus myself through this internal battle and find out who this new me was. I had to redefine success for myself. I had to unlearn what societal success meant. I had to unlearn what my parents' definition of success was. And I had to sit with who I am as an individual and what made me feel successful. And what that was the fact that not only did I start a nonprofit, but I gave myself an opportunity to learn and grow in a completely different field and a completely new endeavor that I would not have done if I stayed in research. Quitting something that I loved forced me to make space for growth in fields and learn skills that I would not have even attempted otherwise. It made me willing to try more things in both my professional and my personal life. I've developed into a braver professional. I've actually started a lot more braver hobbies, such as woodworking, because now I feel like I can do anything. And there really are those personal biases that I had created. The definition of who I was surrounding what I did more than what I was on the inside. And the way I had always defined success was that it needs to be measured by job security and it needs to be measured by a paycheck. But stepping away from everything and relearning myself and falling in love with myself again allowed me to recreate this definition of success and where I see myself. So my message to everyone today and my hope for you is that you take some time to understand who you are as an individual and then figure out how can you incorporate what success means to you to make you as an individual thrive. And with that, I would love to invite Dominique up on stage.
Thank you so much. What a powerful story. Thank you so much for sharing it. And I couldn't agree more that especially as leaders, getting to know yourself and really what is unique about you so that you can be fully authentic, regardless of what you choose to do, is such a critical step to being successful. My name is Dominique. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Vice President of Engineering at Wealthsimple, which makes affordable financial products available to Canadians, regardless of their age, network, background, or education. Throughout my career, I've been called, and I really hesitate saying this live and recording it, but I've now shared it with my company as well, not technical enough at a few critical times, which resulted in me missing out on raises, promotions, and most importantly, like amazing opportunities that I really, really wanted to do and I was excited about. There's one instance after my first parental leave, which was really challenging. I returned to work with a vague title, no role, after having had 2 different managers take over my profile while I was on leave, and they didn't know me. I'd been an engineering manager and leader for over 3 years at that point. I had led multiple teams, but I was being pressured to take a product management job, even though I had no passion in product. They probably didn't realize it, but these leaders had a bias towards what they perceived an engineering leader looked like, how they communicate, and how they do the job. Luckily, I realized that I didn't have to get permission because I was already working there to get the job that I wanted. And so I ended up creating a role that would work for me and built myself a team, and therefore becoming an engineering manager once again. It wasn't until finally when I moved to another company, a completely different one, that I had this like aha moment that the environment just didn't value the same strengths that I had, and I was pushing against the current. And so my takeaway here was that to embrace diversity of gender, of race and thought, and so much more, you need to value people's unique strengths and what they can add to the team. I brought that mindset to Well Simple. And when I joined, we didn't have any management competencies in place, but we needed to hire and grow a lot more leaders. And so we worked on them collaboratively, all of our leaders together. And it might surprise folk on the team, but we decided together that engineering leaders don't necessarily have to have a programming background. We were able to do that because we identified competencies. So a few people before me mentioned how important competencies are. It turns out that being a leader means a lot of things: strategy and execution, people and team growth, along with technology, and in some cases, actually having to program and write code. By being able to talk about it through competencies and to talk through and realize that some roles were different than others and that we could cater them to people's strengths, we were able to overhaul our entire interview process to cater to these different competencies and to really think about how different people can show up both at work and while thinking about taking on a role with us. And so with these changes and a lot of really carefully laid out DEI targets and also thinking about how we can grow members of our team, we increased gender diversity from 20.5% to almost 30% in the past year, and increased the representation of women in engineering management from 5 to 24% through both internal promotions, which is so important, as well as hiring. And, I share this, I share that maybe I, in the past, have not been considered technical enough, even at times where I've written code and I was shipping it in the same sentence, because I hope it inspires others to imagine themselves in a role that is unique for them, that is based on their strengths, and will, satisfy them and help them thrive. And with that, I will pass it to Diane.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dominique. A lot of what you said resonated with me, especially talking about not being technical enough. And I'm actually really inspired by all the talk so far. Welcome, everybody. Happy International Women's Week. My name is Diane Watson. I'm a program manager at Nokia. And I'm also extremely passionate, like the ladies that have spoken before, about trying to help women, young girls, and visible minorities pursue, STEM-related careers. It's interesting this week because I have been speaking to quite a lot of people about bias. What does it mean to have a bias? On one hand, it can mean to be in strong favor of, or prejudice against. And I'm going to share with you a couple of stories where I've experienced both. I'm going to take you back a few years when I was working in professional services. My background is computer science. So a colleague of mine was about to head off on maternity leave, and she was dealing with an extremely difficult customer on a particular problem. And she even told me there was a lot of misogynistic remarks being made. My boss was so upset, he said, you know what, I'm going to put another woman on this particular issue. And that, lucky me, I got that job. I decided to go at it with an open mind and not prejudge the situation. Reached out to the customer and they did not respond to me. Found that strange. However, male colleagues on the same email thread, they responded though they couldn't help with the issue. Nonetheless, I decided to research and figure out what the issue was and provided them with a resolution. They still did not respond to me. It was that same male colleague that actually said, thank you, Dan, for helping with that situation. So that's an example of discrimination. But it's also an example of allyship. That's what my boss did by insisting that a woman continues to help in that situation. He could have taken the easy route and put another male on that particular problem, but he decided no, he's going to stand up for the women in his team. And that made us feel better about ourselves. It actually resulted in inclusion. And interesting enough, I came across an article, mark you, it was about people of color. However, it was a survey where 40% of the respondents said that when their leadership acted like allies and true allies, they actually felt more included, less guarded, and they enjoyed the environment in which they worked. So it's so important. We alone can't break this bias. We need allies and authentic allies, not performative allies. These are the people who are going to advocate, mentor, sponsor folks who are experiencing discrimination. On the other side of the coin, I had to confront my own personal bias. And this is a story I have. I am sure if I ask most of the audience out there, when you were a kid, did you play with dolls? Most of the women would probably say, no, yes, I did. And most of the men, probably not. My daughter did not play with dolls. And I found that very strange. I had a personal bias. Why? Why doesn't she play with dolls? That's not what a young girl is supposed to do. She actually had a preference for cars because she had an older brother. I'm using this example to say that this goes beyond toys. This goes towards influencing children with our own personal biases. And this can extend to how do we see, this could influence their choice of career, as an example. And as a matter of fact, it is proven because Statistics Canada recently, in their 2021 census, said that even though more women were graduating with bachelor degrees, a little under 30% were going into STEM and STEM related fields. And the reason for that is that most of the young ladies were either not exposed to STEM, they don't have enough role models, were discriminated against. And a lot of the stories that we have heard from the ladies who have spoken before, a lot of that would result in people leaving the STEM fields. And that's why it's so important as a mother, if you're somebody in the community, if you, even men, to encourage and expose our young girls. Otherwise, that 20 years from now, we'll be having this exact same conversation where there is no progress being made. So in wrapping up my lightning talk today, I would like you to leave with two takeaways. One for the men out there and also women in seats of power. When you have an opportunity to be an ally, not only to women, but to other marginalized groups, be an authentic ally. Do more than just, right now we're using this. Let's go beyond that and roll up the sleeves and actually make a change after this week and beyond. Make it International Women's Day every day. And also, for those of you out there who have the opportunity to volunteer or to help groups, marginalized groups, please do so that 20 years from now, when we're celebrating International Women's Week, we can say mission accomplished. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to Christine.
Unmute button. Hi, my name is Christine Carino, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Empower.mom, a grassroots community organization supporting mothers going back to work and relaunching careers. I am also the president of the Society for Canadian Women in Science and Technology. So I came to Canada in 2005 for my career. After 2 miscarriages in the Philippines, I was told by the doctor that I was too old to have children. So tick-tock, there goes my biological clock. So I packed my bags and thankfully had option B, a postdoctoral fellowship at UBC. Guess what? Within a year, I gave birth to a girl. I was very happy. 2 years later, a boy, and then another boy. So I wasn't that old, after all, to have kids. I decided to take a few years to stay home full-time and raise my children. When my youngest was 3 years old, I was ready to go to work again. I fortunately landed a job right away, but I had to settle for a role that was a step down from my previous position. My colleagues, who were PhD students at the time I was a postdoc, were already tenured assistant professors, while here I was,
a research assistant on a short-term contract. It was my first conscious brush with the motherhood penalty. I was primed to be a super achiever since I was young, so I was pushing myself to do 100% at the university, working with a high-achieving team, and 100% at home, striving to be a super mom, doing the house chores late into the night. I was so tired. Family-work balance was a new concept that I tried to make sense of, but I burned out. So I decided to take another career pause. I felt defeated. I was a failure. I felt I was nothing. I was nothing without my roles, my titles. And a few months passed. We needed a second income because I felt I was a failure in academia. I wanted to find out other options. Fortunately, I discovered career support program at YWCA. It was a revelation. Many of the women in my cohort were mothers who were also grappling with family-work balance. I was not alone. There were other mothers who all felt like failures. We lost our self-confidence, we were miserable, yet despite being highly successful professionals during past lives, pre-motherhood, what was going on in here? So being together in the program gave us, each of us, the opportunity to share our stories. It was cathartic. The idea of building a community supporting moms going back to work after a long career pause was born. So hello, Empower.mom. I then started to be a champion for moms. I was invited to join the board of the Society of Canadian Women in Science and Technology, of which I'm now president. And in the past 3 years, while I was at the board, we at SQUIST have ensured our professional development programs, encouraged the participation of mothers. It's a very, very small gesture of inclusion. We provide on-site childcare during events. We host family-friendly outdoor activities, encouraging spouses to tag along with underlying agenda of transforming them into allies of women in STEM. At SQUIST, we've been intentional in inviting role models, mothers who have successfully integrated family, work life to our events as speakers. Among these events are a forum at the Women Deliver International Conference in Vancouver in 2019. It was very well attended. We got very good feedback. And the attendees, mothers, wanted more. So we have had a series of brown bags with speakers chronicling their career journeys times motherhood, and the video recordings are accessible at our YouTube channel. We also had last year at hosted a forum at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women Annual Conference on the theme of diversity, parenthood, careers, and the pandemic's backlash. Again, we got very good feedback. Why am I championing mothers relaunching careers? According to Statistics Canada, mothers with long career interruptions face larger earnings gap. I know that for myself whenever I look into our bank account. So mothers whose youngest child was under the age of 6 also consistently had the lowest employment rates. A more recent study in 2019 by RBC Economics indicates that new mothers in their 30s take about 6 years to reestablish their earnings path after having a baby. Wow, such a setback. For new mothers in their late 20s, their pay sinks about 14% further than older mothers. It inches back again when they rejoin the workforce, but even after 10 years, a stubborn gap remains. We contend with the bias that results in the motherhood penalty. What is the motherhood penalty? It's the notion that mothers aren't able to maintain their professional footing, as well as women who don't have children or their male colleagues, because employers still view men and women in traditional roles, with women as caregivers and men as breadwinners. We are perceived as less committed to work. There are concerns for more absenteeism at work because of childcare falling through or children getting sick, and who has to attend to them? The mothers. So key takeaways. For mothers returning to work, you are not alone. Find a community of support. If you can't find one, build your own community. Join organizations such as SQUIST for leadership opportunities. If you are an employer or have the power to hire, look into this untapped pool of talent. Consider job sharing, employing 2 moms for 1 position. If you are offering internships for students, why not consider returnships for mothers? By employing a mother, you are not only changing the life of one, but will impact the future of a whole family. If you're in government and could influence policy changes, continue to support programs addressing the gender pay gap and specifically look into programs to support mothers relaunching careers. By investing in this big pool of talent of moms returning to work or relaunching careers, we're not only impacting the lives of individual women, but affecting the lives of whole families, ensuring better future of our children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. That was incredible. I think I can speak for everyone when I say that this has been a truly inspiring conversation. So we have 5 minutes left to answer some questions. So Lennis, I can hand it over to you to moderate the Q&A period.
Yes, we had some wonderful questions. Thank you, everyone who has commented and participated in this. One question comes from Jeffrey. He says, knowing what you know now, would you have chosen to take a different career path?
So I can jump in on this one to start. So I would say no, I wouldn't have chosen to take a different career path. And the reason for that is because of curiosity. And I think that curiosity is a tool that is so powerful because it means that no matter what I do, I'm not bored and I'm always learning something. And even if I'm in a job or a role that's not particularly that I'm not particularly passionate about or that maybe isn't my dream job, I'm still able to find ways to get some value out of it and to enjoy it because there's so much to learn and to really be curious about that I can still really build a meaningful career that way. And also with curiosity, there's also so much potential moving forward. So I don't feel that I'm constrained to one particular pathway because, I might start looking into something, into a field or into an industry that I find really interesting and just decide to pivot there. I don't feel constrained because I'm really driven by just following my curiosity. So that would be my answer to that question, is that no, I wouldn't do anything differently. And I'm also not fixating myself to a particular career path in the future. I'm staying open to opportunities that present themselves to me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jasmine. I think I just want to also note that because of the things that we have experienced, this is what allows us to grow. So personally, I also wouldn't have chosen a different career path because otherwise I would not be where I'm at. If it wasn't for the lessons and those experiences, then how can I really get to grow? So we have another question. I'm going to try to combine it into two. Do you ever come to a point where you had to move beyond your social conditions and persevered through your individual dedication? And also, how can we have better allies for the young girls coming up? So I'm kind of combining those two because of the limited times. But yeah, was there a point where you had to move beyond your social conditioning and individual dedication? And I'm gonna say, for me, yes, I had to lean into me. So I'll open the question to the rest of the ladies here.
I'd be happy to jump in here and say, absolutely. I left the career that I wanted and really persevered through my individual dedication on learning a new field and learning how to navigate a new field, but taking all of the experiences that I had from the past and seeing how can I apply it to something different. It's not that the experiences, when you leave something, you don't leave those experiences behind. You take it with you take all the learnings with you, and you apply it to something new and different. So yes, absolutely have done that. And if you have the opportunity to do it, I would highly recommend it. It is very difficult, but it really helps you shape and understand who you are as a person. And I think the second part of the question was, how can we have more allies for our younger generation? It's more of, let's bring in the conversation, let's bring in people of different generations to come in and talk to all of us. At the same time, we really need to be listening to what the next generation needs to be true allies for them rather than projecting what we think their needs are. So to me, I think that that is probably one of the biggest ways of being an ally is let's listen to their needs and then see how we can stand by them.
Wow, I love that. Anybody else wants to like pinch in or share anything?
I'd like to weigh in about developing allies for our girls. It starts in the home. I have 2 boys, and I'm raising them to be feminist boys, I hope. And I actually, my boys are also talking. I feel that they're going to choose women, strong women, and they, because they see me in my struggles and in what I'm trying to accomplish, I know they will be supportive of their wives and their children and other women and girls to be what they see in me. So it all starts in the home.
I love that. Yes. So this other question that we have, and I know we're going to have to wrap it up right here, but how can we start the conversation when we see bias occur? And I know, Diane, you really want to take this one.
Yes, thanks, Lenny. I think this is one of these, since I've been talking to a lot of people this week, especially the bias week, and what I've noticed is that a lot of folks, when they hear this conversation, they get defensive. And we don't want to do this blame and shame game. It's really to educate, and it's okay if you make mistakes. We need to be open and to be empathetic and to not discount and to basically take yourself out of the situation and say, what if I were in that situation? How would I behave? And even if you can't necessarily relate because that's not your experience, you can empathize. And by an example of this is, say for example, as a woman, we cannot, in some cases, I heard of this particular situation, like staying home late, staying after work late, and as a result, you're not looked at as somebody who is dedicated, but you have to go home to your kids, or, you need that work-life balance. The same way that men will, if they have to look after their kids, they're saying, oh, you're doing a good job, while women, that's the default. So it's trying to get rid of those gender stereotypes and looking at it through different lens and not assuming, ask questions, and then we can have that conversation going and learn a lot more from each other.
That's wonderful. Kylie, Jasmine, if you just want to kind of take over, close the session. I know we'll answer the rest of the questions that we couldn't answer here through the platforms individually. So thank you so much, everyone.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I know we didn't have too much time to answer all the questions today, but we will be following up with an email. So everyone who registered through Eventbrite will be receiving an email with the LinkedIn or contact information for the speakers today. So you could reach out to any of us. If you want to follow up with additional questions or ask about our stories, we'd be happy to connect with you. So thank you all for participating in this important discussion about breaking the bias against women in STEM. And we sincerely hope that you've gained valuable and practical insights that you can bring with you back to your own world to help dismantle your personal biases that you hold, as well as the systemic biases in the institutions in which you exist. And I want to especially thank today's speakers, Kylie, Lennis, Sana, Rupali, Dominique, Diane, Christine. Your stories are so powerful, and by showing up today, you've impacted literally hundreds of people, and I'm grateful for your authentic leadership and to be surrounded by such brilliant women. So thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and happy International Women's Day.